A warm welcome to you all, and thank you for joining us for this virtual open day for the Graduate Diploma in the History of Art at the Courtauld Institute in London. My name is Teresa Lane, and I'm the head of the Graduate Diploma course. And I'm going to be speaking for about half an hour or so, and then I'm going to be joined by my colleague Anna, who will be speaking more from the postgraduate admissions side, and will talk you through some of the practical side of applying for the course. But I'm going to open today by giving you a bit of an insight into why you might want to apply and come to join us and study at the Courtauld. I should make it clear at the start that I have a bit of a vested interest in this programme. I am a graduate of it myself. 15 years ago, I started at the Courtauld on the graduate diploma, having had a career in the city as a lawyer. And I have kind of done the full Courtauld student journey, staying on for both an MA and a PhD. So it's now my great delight to run this programme. And I think that I bring an insight from having my own experiences, obviously, as a student and understanding it from that perspective. So I'm going to start by giving you a bit of an insight into why you might want to study at the Courtauld for this programme. I should say that more broader questions regarding about the Courtauld itself and the experience of being a student at the Courtauld is available in a presentation by a colleague. So I'm not going to kind of address the sort of broader benefits of studying in London at the Courtauld. I'm going to be focusing really on the graduate diploma course itself. And I thought the best starting point might be to show you a kind of before and after photo. This is the graduate diploma cohort from 23-24 academic year. And on the left, you will see a photo of us all in the Courtauld Gallery. This was during Welcome Week. And then that is partnered with the after photo at graduation, which was in July. And I feel that this kind of encapsulates the sort of intense journey that students on this programme make and the sort of extraordinary nature of it. And I'm pairing these photos with a quote from one of my former students, Irinia, who did the graduate diploma and then stayed on for a further year to complete the master's programme. And I like what she says here because she's reflecting on time, I think, in a broader sense. And she says, after 2 years, I can't help but feel that time at the Courtauld has different properties. It moves faster than anywhere else and leaves one craving for more, which is a lovely testimonial of her experience. So I'm going to try and get under the skin about why this elusive factor of time might be so different here, and why studying for the diploma does leave most students, craving for more. The diploma itself now operates in both the full-time original iteration and the part-time version. The 9-month full-time course starts in September and runs through to graduation in July. The same course is now available spread over 2 academic years for part-time students. That's a new venture for us. We have currently the first cohort of part-time students who started with us in September, and full-time and part-time students are taught together. Our intake is up to 25 full-time students and up to 20 part-time students each year. And the key aspect to the diploma is that it provides graduates who come with a degree in another discipline other than history of art with the opportunity to transfer skills to history of art. People tend to come to this programme from a really diverse range of backgrounds and experiences. For example, in the cohort this year, I have people that have degrees in biochemistry, physics, history, English, you name it. So a real wide gamut of experience at undergraduate level. But in all cases, what they're hoping to do by studying for the diploma is to transfer skills into history of art. The closest analogy I can give, and for those of you that are familiar with the UK system for training as a lawyer, you can do an undergraduate law degree in 3 years, or as a non-law graduate, you can do a fast-track version of the undergraduate degree in a year. And this is kind of what the Courtauld graduate diploma does, but for art history. Who are the kind of people that might want to do the course? Well, that really varies. In general, it's people who want to come back to higher education and who want to get an overview in a more academic way about art history. Now, those who are returning to higher education, in some instances, it can be they've just literally graduated from their undergraduate degree, so they will be in their early 20s typically. However, we also have a large group of students who have had successful professional careers and lives outside and after their undergraduate degrees. So to give you a sense of what that actually means, in practice, our cohort in any given year, maybe the youngest person will be in there, as I say, sort of 22, 21, and the oldest can be sort of 70, 75, someone who's retired and who's coming back. So we welcome everybody, and it's one of the kind of extraordinary aspects of this course that makes it so distinctive, the way that the group of students bond together over the course of their studies. Why people come to do it is as you'd expect from the diversity of backgrounds and ages, really mixed. In general, it is people wanting a more academic deep dive into history of art. Many people have come having done other courses, short courses, or studied elsewhere. But this is an academically rigorous course, and that's what one of the sort of main features that appeals to students. Another group of students are also wanting to use it as a stepping stone to further study. And it's a great basis for studying for a master's in history of art, either here at the Courtauld or elsewhere. In terms of how it's taught, I'm going to go down into a bit more detail about that in the next slides. But you are taught through a combination of lecture and seminar models, and often taught alongside our undergraduate students. So let's have a think about some of the aspects of what you'd be learning at on this course. Teaching is spread over 2 semesters, and we have certain programs that run over both semesters, and we have other modules that run each one per semester. The course that runs over semester 1 and semester 2 is our foundation course, Foundations. And as its title suggests, is a sort of foundational introduction to some of the main periods, artists, and approaches to art history. And this is part of what we call the taught element of the course. Most of this course is taught, but as you'll see, there's also an element which is self-led research. But for now, let's just deal with the taught element. So Foundations, as I say, runs over 2 semesters and is taught via 2 lectures each week with a follow-up discussion class. That is supplemented by some courses designed to sort of amplify your art history toolbox, if you like, your kit bag. And that is physical histories in the first semester, which, as the name suggests, is looking at the materiality of art, buildings, objects. And that runs for 1 semester and is then followed by a course on exhibiting art, which again is looking at quite specifically the issues around exhibiting, curating, display. Alongside these courses, you are choosing from a series of optional courses known as our Histories and Approaches courses, which are more of an in-depth dive into themes, periods in history of art. So let me tell you a little bit more about Foundations. The students who are on the graduate diploma currently are coming just to the end of this autumn semester now. They are in the early modern block. Each block lasts for 3 weeks and, as I say, is taught by 2 fairly traditional form lectures and a discussion class. I happened to be sitting in on the discussion class yesterday in my way of keeping in touch with students and understanding what's going on. And the discussion was on how images were affected by the Reformation and the Counter-Reformation in Northern and Southern Europe. So the seminar leader was guiding students in, or sort of doing a deeper dive, I really suppose, in some of the issues that were drawn out in the lecture. And it was very much a discursive environment with students speaking up, being questioned and contributing. You can see from the autumn semester that is actually kind of following a sort of broadly chronological roadmap, starting with the classical and Byzantine block, followed by medieval, which is my own specialty, and then the early modern, which is what's being concluded at the moment. And then after Christmas in the spring, there are further blocks which jump forward in terms of time and periods. I should say that, and as you won't probably be surprised to hear, foundations can't cover everything. We don't aim to start at the beginning, wherever that might be, geographically or in date, and work our way through. It is selective by nature, but all of our courses are taught by faculty who are actively researching in their field. So it gives you a real insight into how their research impacts on their in-depth study of these periods. So Foundations runs, as I've said, through both semesters for students and is supplemented by these courses. And I'm giving you a flavour of the kind of options that have been available currently in the first semester. These change year on year, I should point out, depending on faculty, but they're a good example of the kind of breadth of periods and style of art and architecture that we teach. Radical Light is a contemporary course taught about moving image. Art in the Crusades, more historically based, obviously in the medieval period, the modern interior, modernism, 20th century, and then reality and fantasy in French art, a 19th century course. So hopefully enough to keep lots of areas of interest open for students. That is running currently and is taught, again, a similar way to Foundations, combination of lecture followed by a discussion class, which is a chance to sort of unpick themes from those lectures in more detail. Students move on after Christmas to take the Approaches module, having finished the Histories course. And as the name suggests, this is a different way of thinking about art history through the way that scholars have approached the period, the certain styles of art. And we're looking at texts, primary sources that shed light onto these areas. I teach one of these courses. I teach the course Embodiments, the Body as Subject and Object in Medieval Art. And I look at things, for example, such as gender or the other, and how that might be reflected in the art of the period and how scholars have engaged with those sorts of themes. That is taught not in a lecture model, but in a discussion class format. Moving on, the other courses which I reference, which are taken, are these more coming at art history from a point of view of looking at the materiality and the exhibition, the display of the art. Physical history is just running for the first semester and has been really popular with the current cohort of students, as it usually is. It's taught with input from colleagues in conservation, and it's looking at aspects of conservation and, as I've said, the materiality of art, looking at the way that how we see these objects displayed, their level of conservation impacts that. And again, you're taught by people who are at the forefront of their field and have often worked on these, paintings, the restoration of paintings, the conservation of buildings that you will be very familiar with. That is taught again in the lecture and seminar model. As is Exhibiting Art, which is the course that follows in the second semester and considers the role that museums and galleries play in society. And it takes a view of looking at what's happening now and also what's happened historically. So for those of you that go to exhibitions and enjoy that, which I'm sure many of you do, for example, thinking about issues like why is it that some galleries now seem to be taking the approach of maybe removing wall labels, not having captions next to their paintings, whereas others stick to that. So these sorts of different approaches to the way that art is displayed and the way that we engage with it as viewers is at the core of this course. The other element of this course, and an important one, is the dissertation and research skills aspect of the module. For all students that are coming to the Courtauld, whether they've been in higher education more recently, or certainly for those that have been out of it for a longer period of time, we offer a series of academic skills workshops. These run right at the start of the academic year and are really designed to help you get back into the sort of the way of writing and thinking academically. And it covers some basic skills such as visual analysis, which is the core really of all that we do and all of our writing in art history, but as well as some more practical issues around essay writing, structuring, for example, how you make an argument, and also the nitty-gritty of what we term scholarly apparatus. So in other words, footnotes, how to caption images. And all of this is designed to give you a sort of supported return to study and to allow you to re-engage with that sort of type of writing. And these academic skills workshops are intended by both the full-time and the part-time students for the first half of the semester. This module then sort of evolves, and for full-time students who are doing their dissertation, obviously at the conclusion of their first year, they move on to really engage with that dissertation topic. And this aspect is the sort of research-led element of the course, as I mentioned, not taught. And this is a piece of independent research which allows you to engage with the materials and methods that you've experienced, or perhaps that you come with pre-existing interest in. But crucially, it allows you to define your own research area and title. And this is a really wonderful culmination, I suppose, of the graduate diploma, and allows students to produce work that is often really cutting edge and interesting. And you see students who come in perhaps with ideas of what they want to work on, but then maybe change their minds because they've been kind of interested in something they've learnt on their histories course and want to develop that. You are helped in this process by workshops that are run alongside the third-year undergraduates who are also working on the production of their dissertations. And these really start to hone things like your research skills, how you start thinking about the kind of research questions that will sustain a more scholarly length project, and how to prepare things like a bibliography and those sorts of aspects. And then the lovely thing about the dissertation exercise is you are partnered with a member of faculty who is able to guide you and share that journey with you, and helps you in the first instance shape the research questions and work on the topic so that you get the most from the experience, and then is there as a sort of guiding light over the process of research. And that includes, part of the research includes making a presentation in a small group setting where you set out some of your research questions. And it's a chance for not just the supervisors, but the small group of other students that you're paired with and grouped with to discuss. And students have found that a really helpful way of maybe kind of getting a different perspective on a topic that they're considering. So that is, in a nutshell, the core elements of the graduate diploma. It's a lot of information, and I'm just giving you here in the slides that follow how it works in terms of the full-time route, which I've got on the screen now, and then I'll move on to show you the part-time route. As I've said, the full-time route is a 9-month course, by its nature immersive and intense, and you would expect typically to be attending the Courtauld every day of the week for classes. You can see that Foundations, as I've said, runs over both semesters, Histories in semester 1, Approaches in semesters 2, and then the same with the Physical Histories and Exhibiting Art. And then the culmination of the full-time year, of course, is the dissertation. The part-time version of the course splits the studying in half. You do the Foundations element in the first year, and you take your Histories and Approaches electives. The main difference really with the part-time version of the course is that it's only in your second year that you embark on your dissertation, and it's also in your second year that you take the Physical Histories and Exhibiting Art modules. In terms of attendance for part-time, we expect 2 days each week to be attending part-time. That is there for you to come to the discussion class elements. Lectures can be watched online, but the discussion classes by their nature need in-person attendance. And also from the point of view of building an esprit de corps for the cohort and getting to know fellow students, the feedback we've had from the current cohort of part-time students is that coming on site a couple of times a week, and some come more, I should say, 2 days is the minimum, is really helpful in getting them feeling like they're part of the Courtauld Institute. What to expect in terms of deadlines is on this slide, and it is there to sort of give you a sense of and this is a roadmap for the full-time students. And you can see from the middle column of the deadline dates that these dates run through, the first deadline was just after reading week in early November, and then they run through at staggered intervals through the year. The deadline schedule and the submission schedule is available to students right at the start of the year, which is helpful for you in terms of planning when you need to maybe make sure that you're available and you keep your diary freer. The other reason for having staggered deadlines is because we feel that it's very important for students to get feedback on their work. So you will see that the foundations, the first essay for foundations has had a deadline in November, and students have just literally got their feedback and their marks this week. And the feedback is very much designed to help you progress. So it's designed to help you understand what you're doing well and the areas that you need to work on. And this is a process that students really benefit from. It is a way of helping you feel that it's a steep learning curve for all students on this course, but it's a way of helping you kind of understand what we're looking for at the Courtauld and how your writing can be shaped to those ends. So this is a sort of flavour of the way that these assessments work. And you will see that they are mainly essay-based. Foundations is by essay. You do 2 essays each semester and you carry forward the highest mark. Physical histories and exhibiting art are both assessed in the form of a portfolio, which is 3 shorter pieces of work, still written work, but for example, in the exhibiting art, you might be doing the script for an audio guide, or writing in physical histories, you might be writing a wall label or a conservation, an aspect of a conservation report. So it's more tailored to the elements of that module. And then you'll see that the histories course is by a longer form essay, and you also have the dissertation of 5,000 words. The only exam-based assessment is for the approaches course, and that is not done in the old style exam hall in person. All exams now are online and within a defined window of time. So I think that gives a sort of good overview of the kind of way that the assessment work over the year. In terms of how things work once you arrive and what support you'll receive, the answer is you'll receive plenty. I am personal tutor for the graduate diploma cohort. I meet with all students during welcome week, and I have then further follow-up tutorials, one-to-one tutorials, in both semesters. In addition to me, however, you have access to a whole host of brilliant people at the Courtauld. In terms of helping you with your research and writing, particularly skills, we have the Royal Literary Fund Fellows who are available for you to meet with and book appointments with to talk about essays specifically. We have a Dean for Students who is there to sort of hear any concerns you have about your learning journey. We have a very well-resourced wellbeing team that is supported by counsellors and study skills tutors and disability support. So the full range of support is available here. We also have a very active student union, and graduate diploma students participate and are invited to all events that undergraduates and postgraduate students participate in here. And we finally have a brilliant careers service. I work very closely with the head of the careers service here, and we offer 2 events, bespoke events for the graduate diploma students. We've just completed them actually in the first semester, one of which is an introduction to careers, bearing in mind that, as I've said, students will be coming with very different aspirations and career goals. We kind of start the thinking journey on what resources are available at the Courtauld and the kind of questions you might want to be pondering. And then that is partnered with a session on the MA, not just at the Courtauld, but more broadly, and addressing questions on why you might want to consider further postgraduate study. So there is a good range of people here at the Courtauld to support you. The other really important support network is the cohort itself. This year's cohort, there are 32 students, and they formed a WhatsApp group even before they'd arrived in one of the offer day events, and they are, a cohesive group that are there to support each other and to sort of share the ups and downs and the challenges of their academic learning. So that is another very important part and very enjoyable part of learning here. Just now to turn to life after the Courtauld and to give you some sort of insight into that. You will be learning through the courses that I've outlined a whole range of transferable skills, and I've just put a few on the screen now to give you sort of a sense of what they are. One of the key aspects of learning and the teaching of art history at the Courtauld is this phrase visual analysis, which I referenced earlier. But basically what that means is how you can analyse what you see, whether it's a painting or a sculpture or a building, and then articulate an argument based on that, based on the elements of that object. And that can include both in written work, in essays, but also orally in presentations. You'll be doing a lot of reading on this course. All the readings week by week are put out ready for you on our virtual learning environment. But there is a lot of reading. That is one of the steepest aspects of the learning curve that students all comment on when they start. And typically students start by finding it slower and harder, but as they do more and more of it, they become more confident and are able to do it more quickly. And allied to that is the ability to assimilate not just quantity, but also complex material, articles, scholarly debate, that sort of thing. And you'll be helped in this journey, how you kind of work out what the key points are in a scholarly journal and what to focus on in your digesting of it. Leading on from that, we are encouraging students to move towards personal observation, to articulating their own views, formulating and expressing a range of their ideas based on the visual analysis and based on understanding what the scholarly consensus is, and being able to disseminate that those ideas to a varied audience, to write in scholarly academic language in an essay form, for example, but students on the graduate diploma and indeed in our other programs also participate, for example, in our lunchtime free talks that are on at the gallery, the Courtauld Gallery in Somerset House, and obviously you're presenting to a different audience for that. You'll be developing research skills, learning how to research an essay, and you'll be learning the sort of skills that you need to write longer form essays in the form of a dissertation. And the collaborative element is really important. A lot of the teaching, as you'll have seen, is small group teaching, but also the collaboration within the cohort itself. Where that leads to is a very, again, a difficult question to answer because it references the fact that students come from very different backgrounds and with very different experiences. For some students, as the slide shows, course is definitely a path to career change. Many students come in here wanting to pivot into art history, and that is their foundational reason for doing the course. However, for a great many others, that is not the priority. Certainly for people that have had a long career in other fields, they are maybe doing it for a different reason, little to do with careers, more to do with personal satisfaction and academic challenge. To give you some idea of the kind of things that students in past years have gone on to do, I think this is a helpful way of exploring that. Many, I should say, and it varies in any given year, but certainly from the presentations I gave the week before last, I would expect at least half of the current cohort, so about 15 students, maybe more, to go on to apply for an MA, either here at the Courtauld or indeed elsewhere. And some students will go on then to carry on their postgraduate research even further. For a great many students, their priority is to get a job. And in the art world. And so that can cover a whole variety of options, dealerships, auction houses, curating, journalism, etc., etc. So we have, as I've said, a career service to help with those kind of, and to make you aware of the kind of jobs and opportunities that are out there. For other students, it's a question of returning to a career that they had before they did the diploma, but with a different perspective, or wanting to kind of pivot within that world. For example, one of my students last year came from a successful career in academic publishing. She completed the diploma and is now just coming to the end of her first semester on the MA. And she's hoping to stay in publishing, but to move into more kind of arts-related publishing. For other students, it's the possibility of volunteering and being able to get volunteer roles. I write many references to support students for applications. Recently, I've had students applying for the Royal Historic Palaces, the Design Museum, the Wallace Collection here in London as a few examples. But for many, it is the diploma is a really sort of nourishing sense of personal satisfaction, and also many go on to sort of keep meeting up with friends that they've made on the course and keep studying and keep in fact arranging travel and trips to exhibitions and galleries together. So it's a very, very wide range of outcomes, as you'll see. The career service is part of that. And as I've said, just to give you a little sense of what that actually means, the opportunities that are on offer are one-to-one appointments, practice interviews, if that's helpful, a whole host of online resources and help sheets, a more structured careers institute careers program, which is a very range of courses and talks that run through the academic year, and a lot of industry and employer events. For example, recently my colleagues in careers have hosted an event with Christie's, the auction house, and the next session I think is going to be a group of alumni who are in the art world coming to speak to students. So there's a real variety and all sorts of interests are catered for. Finally, I thought I'd just conclude before handing over to Anna to give you some insight into what students have said about their experience here at the Courtauld on the diploma. And I've chosen some students from very different ages and backgrounds to give you a flavour of this. And the first quote is from Alfie, who is on the far left in the photo holding a glass of wine at graduation. And he had come from UCL, so from a big university. And what he relished at the Courtauld on the diploma course was the smaller scale of it, basically. The Courtauld only teaches history of art. We are a single subject institution. That doesn't mean we're tiny, and you'll hear more about that on the broader what the Courtauld does talk. But it means that we're all specialists, and it means crucially that you'll get to know people quickly through the faculty and also in the cohort. And he found that going on trips and having teaching in front of objects, which is one of our real passions here, was one of the things which helped him in his learning journey. So that was Alfie. Another student, Theone, who's now working in a gallery in Athens, commented on the sort of scholarly journey. And I think for her, it was the sort of challenge of the academic learning. She came from a background in economics and wanted to pivot into the art world. And she found that the course challenged her to sort of think creatively and to sort of engage with the bibliography, historiography, what's been written and what scholars have said about objects and how she can then insert herself into that debate. Sharon was a mature student, a practicing artist, and came to the Courtauld again as a graduate diploma student, and then has completed an MA just in the last year. And what she really benefited from was the extensive resources here, whether it was from wellbeing or from people who are willing and want to answer questions. This idea that you should speak up, and we encourage that environment very much. And then finally, another international student, Guy, who had a career in another world, but is now having just completed his MA, looking to get a career in Portugal, where he comes from, in the art world. And he admits, we had a great conversation at graduation where he said, it was a hard journey, but unforgettable in his mind, for both the scholarly journey, but also I think for the connections and the friendships which he made. So I think that gives you a sort of flavour, at least, of what previous students have said, and gives you sort of an insight into the sort of different demographic, ages, backgrounds, and nationalities. I'm going to hand over now to my colleague Anna, who's the Admissions and Enrolment Administrator, and she's going to take you through some of the more practical aspects of applying to the Courtauld. After Anna's given you her presentation and gone through her slides, we'll take questions. Over to you, Anna.
Great, thank you, Teresa. And would you be happy to kind of switch through the slides as and when?
Of course.
Thank you, that's great. So as Teresa said, my name's Anna. I work in the admissions team at the Courtauld, and I'll be talking you through the admissions process and some details about application documents. So I'm going to start off with some key dates and some information about tuition fees. So applications are now open. You can apply from now on. For the graduate diploma, the application deadline is the 27th of April. And for applicants who apply up to that date, we will aim to issue outcomes in May. It's kind of not for a little while now, but just something to keep in mind in the future. Moving on to fees. So as Teresa has talked about, we have the full-time and the part-time version of the programme. So full-time fees for home students is £16,275, and for overseas students it would be £29,085. For part-time home students, it's £8,000 and £130. Sorry, and then for overseas students, part-time is 14,500. The one thing I want to say about part-time overseas fees is that please do just be aware that if you require a student visa to study with us, it's not possible to take the programme on a part-time basis. That's due to kind of visa regulation restrictions. So if you didn't require a student visa, that might be something that's possible, but typically it's kind of not possible. So we do just want to flag that now. And then something else to be aware of is that if you have studied with us before, say, for example, you did your BA with us, you may be eligible for our alumni loyalty discount, which is 10% of tuition fees for the programme. So that's just something I wanted to flag now. That's great. If we could go to the next slide, that would be great.
My computer has frozen unhelpfully, Anna. I'm sorry. Maybe you could speak to the next slide. Sorry, I can't seem to move onwards.
Okay, I will. I'll go ahead whilst that's kind of I'm going. Yeah, so the next thing I was going to talk about is our entry requirements. So for UK students or people who have studied in the UK for their BA, we are looking for typically for them to have achieved a good 2-1 in their bachelor's degree. As Teresa says, we're kind of looking at people applying from all across different disciplines. So we're not necessarily looking for a particular topic. We're looking at kind of many forms of academic and professional experience. It's kind of don't need that to be in the history of art, but it's more just like the grade that we're looking for there. And then if you are from overseas, or maybe you did your BA at an overseas institution, then we're looking for an equivalent grade to that good 2-1. So a common example is US students. So for them, we're looking for a cumulative GPA of 3.3 or above. But I will say that our international team have recently published a very helpful website called International Entry Requirements, which goes into a bit more detail about what those equivalences are for quite a large number of countries. So I'd really recommend having a look at that website and seeing kind of the details for your particular circumstances. And then if you had any questions, you could get in touch with our international team, and they're more than happy to kind of chat about your particular circumstances. And then the kind of other requirement that we have is that if English language or English is not your first language, then we do require evidence that you meet our English language requirements. So there are a number of different ways that you can meet this entry requirement. The two main tests that we accept are IELTS and Cambridge English test. But there are some other ways. So, for example, if you did your BA at a UK institution, that would be a way of meeting the requirement. But there are some more details on all the different ways that you can do that on our website, English language requirements. So again, I'd recommend having a look there and then getting in touch with us if you have any questions about your particular circumstance. That's great. If I could get the next slide. Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to talk about some specific documents that we require in your application in a bit more detail. So I'm going to start with personal statements. So your personal statement, it's got 600 word limit, and it allows you to kind of talk about yourself really and why you're applying. So first of all, you can outline why you particularly want to study at the Courtauld. And then you can go into more detail about any kind of previous study or projects, or just maybe your BA dissertation or any other essays or any work experience that you have that might make you a good fit. You can talk about any key skills or any key interests that you have, again, that you think make you a strong candidate for the graduate diploma. And then you can also talk about why you think you in particular stand out as a candidate for the programme. And then also any career aspirations that you have, and why you think studying this particular programme at Courtauld will help you achieve those. As it says there, it's not prescriptive. You don't have to stick to it kind of line by line, word by word, but it should give you a strong starting point to build your own more kind of specialised personal statement. That's great. Good. Move on to the next slide. That'd be great. I can kind of jump forward if it's taking a bit of a lag. Yeah, it's all good. Thank you. So I was next going to talk about the written work sample. So for the graduate diploma, we're looking for a written work sample of between 2,000 and 3,000 words. So this could be a chapter from your BA dissertation, or an essay that you've written in previous study, or even 2 essays that combined kind of are still below the word limit. However, we do appreciate, as Teresa was talking about, that everyone's coming from a very wide range of fields. So if you have been out of education for a long time and you don't have an academic writing sample to submit, then you can write a new essay. We would suggest that you visit a gallery or a museum, anywhere you like, and write a detailed analysis or comparison of 2 pieces of work. And that kind of, we think, is a good way of sort of an alternative to an academic essay. Because what we're really looking for is something that demonstrates your capacity for written academic English. So kind of the topic itself doesn't necessarily matter. If you've got an essay from your own BA degree that's not in history of art, that's okay. It's kind of, you've got to think about what sort of represents you best in kind of your academic writing style. Whatever you submit, please do add some context on what it is we're looking at. So for example, this is chapter 3 of my dissertation, and just so our reviewers know what they're looking at. And then if what you've written is not in English, then we would ask that you provide an English language translation, again, just so we know kind of what we're looking at. Yeah, that's great. I'm going to move on to the next slide. I will kind of jump forward, but yeah, don't worry about it. It's kind of lagging. Okay, so next I was going to talk about academic transcripts. So very important document. We need the official transcripts of all your completed degrees. And if you are kind of currently doing the degree, we would ask for an interim transcript. For your completed degrees, this might sound a bit silly, but what we're really looking for in particular, among a number of things, is your final overall grade, and especially with some international qualifications, those aren't always included on the document. So before applying, we would ask that you just take a look at your transcript, and if that's not on there for whatever reason, kind of an overall grade, we're requesting a letter from your university that has that detail on there, just so we know exactly kind of what your final grade was, and therefore kind of how you have met our entry requirements. That's just really helpful and kind of makes things run a bit smoother. In terms of what we accept, it does need to be an electronic copy, so that could be directly from your university, or you could scan a hard copy if you only have sort of a physical piece of paper. That's fine. We can accept scan. If you've not, as I mentioned, if you've not completed it yet, an interim transcript is fine, on the understanding that if you do receive an offer, then it would be conditional on receiving that final transcript with your overall grade on it. And then again, like with the written sample, we do need an English translation of anything that's not in English. For transcripts, they do need to be a certified English translation. So that's definitely something to think about now if you think that's relevant to you, because they can take a little while to come through sometimes. So it's just something to plan ahead for. That's great. That's everything I had to say about academic transcripts. I'm actually going to go to the next slide. That's great. Perfect. Okay. So I was going to move on to academic references. So ideally, we are looking for 2 academic referees, with one being your BA dissertation supervisor. However, again, sort of tying back again to what Teresa was saying about kind of where everyone's coming from on this degree, if that's not possible for whatever reason, maybe you did your BA degree a long time ago, we can also accept professional referees. What we're looking for is someone who can speak to your intellectual abilities and your potential to learn. So if you feel like a professional referee can do that, then that's okay. Ideally, if you could have 1 academic reference and 1 professional reference, that would be great, but we appreciate everyone's coming from different places. When you submit your application, an automatic reference request will be sent to your referee. So we do ask people to let their referee know ahead of time, preferably 4 to 6 weeks ahead of time, that they'll be nominated as a referee, so they have time to prepare and kind of get that ready to submit. If kind of your references haven't come through exactly on the day, on the 27th of April, that's okay, but after a little bit of time, usually around 5 working days or so, if they haven't come through, then it may be the case that your application is being reviewed without references, and so it's really in your best interest to sort of chase those up and kind of make sure that they're prepared to submit, so that your application is as strong as it can be. So again, it's just something to think about ahead of time. Yeah, that's great. If we can move on to the next slide, that would be great. Perfect. Okay, so the last kind of main thing that I'm going to be talking about is just the small other documents that we require. So we do need your passport or passports. If you have multiple, then we need kind of copies of all of them, just making sure that they're clear scans with all the details legible, so we kind of know what we're looking at. We also request a CV. This is a really helpful document in conjunction with your personal statement, because you can kind of detail all your previous study, any previous work experience, or anything at all that you think might make application stronger, you know, any kind of courses or events that you've been to, that sort of thing. In particular, for kind of work experience and study, we do ask that you include dates and locations, just gives us a bit more context, so we know what we're looking at. And then lastly, we do require a scan of any previous UK visas that you hold if you're an international student. So if you did your BA here, for example, we would need to see your student visa from your time here. But then the last big thing I'm just going to bring your attention to is our postgraduate application guidance and FAQ page. It goes into a lot of detail about everything I've just kind of spoken about, a bit more detail as well. So I'd really recommend having a look there, going through it before you submit your application. And then if you had any specific questions, you can always reach out to the admissions team. I think our email will be on the next slide, which is the, oh, sorry, that's it's a bit out of date, that document, so I'm not going to touch on it. Great, it will be on that slide there, which is the pgadmissions@courtauld.ac.uk. So if you have any questions that aren't touched on the website, then please do just get in touch, and we're happy to discuss your particular circumstances. But that's great. I'm going to hand back to Teresa for the Q&A portion of the session, but I'm going to stick around to answer any admissions questions. That's great. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna. That's a really helpful insight into sort of the nitty-gritty of applying. And I would just underline the point that Anna made about the writing sample. We realise for many applicants to this course that they won't have something that they've written on their sort of undergraduate dissertation for the last couple of years. And it's a really, I hope it's not a stressful experience, but we really encourage people to just go and go to your favourite gallery, choose a painting or a pair of objects, and set yourself the task of writing about them and see how you find it. That's really what the task is all about. But I can provide more guidance about that if you have individual questions. Now, I'm going to see if I can see if there's any questions in the chat. And I think I've been able to access them for now. And we have a question about a possibility to follow this or similar programs remotely, or do you plan to have other remote programs? Thank you for that question. I think what I understand you might mean by remote is by not attending in person. That is not currently a route that we have on offer at the Courtauld. As I explained with the part-time iteration of this course, students still need to be able to attend in person 2 days a week. That is our minimum requirement. That may change in the future. We are expanding our portfolio of talk courses almost year on year. So watch this space is what I can say. But for now, it requires in-person attendance. A question about the time of the classes for the part-time students. That really varies depending on the option that you take. As I've said, some of these are you can choose. But for this semester, for example, part-time students have had to attend on Mondays and Wednesdays. Wednesday being a particularly full day, so their first lecture would be at 10 a.m. and some of them are working through with breaks, I should say, finishing at about 5. So it's quite a long day. Monday is, I think the first lecture is at 10 and maybe the last class is around 3 o'clock. So that gives you a sort of flavour of that. There's a question on fees here, Anna, perhaps you could answer. Are the fees per annum or for course?
They're per annum, yeah. So the fees I touched on earlier, obviously for the full time, then that's just kind of what you're paying for the full year. But then for the part time, that would be per year. Yeah.
Thank you, Anna. Another question about the how competitive is the admissions process, and what is the acceptance rate? It's very difficult to give a figure on that because the number varies year on year. I think Anna would agree with me on that. It is competitive, I would say. We have a large number of applications, and we review them carefully. But we are looking for evidence of not just your past experience, but also what you're going to bring to the cohort and to the sort of that sort of a shared experience of the graduate diploma. So this is why your personal statement really matters. So we have a high level of people applying, but we also encourage people to get in touch earlier with me or with Anna if you want to discuss any aspects of the application process. Another question here, I think for Anna, maybe for you, a question about the discount on tuition fees. Does it apply if you've taken a short course at the Courtauld?
Yes, I believe so. I believe it's any
Yes.
previous study with us makes you
Yes.
eligible for that.
Yes, that's absolutely as I understand it. Another question for you, Anna, asking whether it's someone who's applying after the master's deadline has passed, whether that would affect their chances of being accepted.
I would say they're kind of two separate deadlines. So if you're applying for the for a master's program, then you'd absolutely kind of recommended apply by the 12th of January. But if you're applying for the graduate diploma, it's kind of its own independent deadline, and kind of it's sort of that's to be expected that you'd be applying kind of around that time. If you're obviously you can apply earlier, that's fine, but it's not going to impact your chances on for the graduate diploma if you're applying by the 27th of April. If that makes sense.
Thank you. Yeah, that's really helpful. Thank you. Another question, whether it's possible to apply for this coming year and defer to the next year if I'm not able to attend due to family obligations and logistics. This is obviously a question from someone who doesn't live in the UK.
Yeah, so we don't generally allow deferrals. So we would say that if you applied and you were successful in securing an offer and then you weren't able to come, it would be a case of reapplying the next year. So just kind of having to decline your offer and then reapplying is sort of our policy on that. Yeah.
That said, we are aware that some people have last minute changes in their circumstances, and that happened this year, I think, with a student who was all set to come, and then there was a change in their employment situation, and so we generally want people to come the year they've applied, but there is some possibility if it's last minute and unavoidable. Another question about the student journey, about how many students go on to the Courtauld MA programme after completing the graduate diploma. I can't give you an exact figure because it will vary year on year, but I would say it's fairly typical that at least half of the cohort go on to further study in some shape or form. And as I've said, that can include at the Courtauld, we have a large number of very popular special options that are taught at master's level. But I've also written references for students. One of my students last year on the diploma has just started an MA at King's, for example, because he wanted to go down more of a sort of business route, international relations. So, but as a rule of thumb, probably around 50% of students. And what's interesting, I find, is that some students start the course at the beginning of the year and they'll say, "Oh, I'm not interested in staying on. I just want to come and do the diploma." And that's great. We have plenty of students that just want to come for the year. But around this time, because the MA deadline is earlier than the graduate diploma deadline, I've had 4 meetings yesterday with students who are all kind of saying, "I've changed my mind. I'm liking it so much that I want to apply for the masters." So I think there's an element of flexibility. And again, people seeing whether they'll be successful in getting onto their preferred programs. So it is a popular route. Couple more questions. Other than the previously discussed guidance on the personal statement, what else makes a striking and strong statement? That's a really good question. Thank you for that. I'll have a go at answering that, Anna, and then please do jump in if you think I've missed anything. I read a lot of personal statements, as you can imagine. And I think, really what I'm trying to get a sense of is you. Why you, and Anna dealt with this as well, but what is it about you and your sort of trajectory that makes you think that you will be coming to the Courtauld and you want to be part of this programme? So I think it's really sort of evidence of your interest in art history. Yes, of course. But maybe, for example, it will depend on your circumstance. But say if you've been out of the academic world for some time, what have you done in the intervening time to show that you're still connected in the world? So, for example, have there been any exhibitions that you've been to recently that have really made an impression on you, or books that you've read? Maybe you've read the latest book on whichever artist it might be, or an exhibition catalogue, and you were struck by one of the essays. Maybe you've heard one of our faculty speak, either at a research forum event, which we run here at the Courtauld regularly, or elsewhere, and your interest has been piqued by that. So I think anything like that, which speaks to, rather than more sort of generic I like art type of responses, but more like why it is that you like this particular art and why it is that you'd like to particularly engage with it in a more academic way. It may be relevant, for example, that you've done other courses. Anna's mentioned the short courses, and many, in fact, of our graduate diploma students have done Courtauld short courses as a way in, or have done courses elsewhere. For myself, for example, I did some short courses at the Victoria and Albert Museum. So again, mention them. Anything really that speaks to and supports your interest will be really valuable. Anything, Anna, that I've missed?
No, I was going to agree with you, and just kind of say that it can be a bit more varied, the personal statement for the graduate diploma, than maybe what you'd see for MA, because of the kind of varied backgrounds of our applicants. But I think Teresa's really kind of touched on what you can do to make a strong personal statement in those circumstances. So, if you are coming straight from a BA, it might kind of be more like a master's sort of kind of personal statement. But if you're not, then there are lots of other ways that you can kind of make it really personalised and specific to your circumstances.
I think that's a really nice point, actually. And it just one point that I should underline is that the graduate diploma aims to be broad. That is its aspiration. It's trying to give you a broad-based introduction to art history. So the courses, as you'll have seen from my brief overview, are deliberately disparate in terms of chronology, period, geography. We are aiming to expose you to a variety of art historical methods and approaches and genres and artists. If you choose to sort of study at MA or beyond, that is the time to sort of narrow. So I think, we're not necessarily looking for a sort of, all I want to do is study Picasso type of approach, but maybe an interest in broader modernism, for example, might be the way to deal with that. I think we have just one other question, Anna, which I think I can respond to. This is from somebody who's writing, who's older, in their mid-60s, and practicing artist. How fabulous, and has had several exhibitions but never studied art history. Wonderful. Do you have students my age? Absolutely, we do. Yes, I can say that categorically, we do. We also have many students, not just on the graduate diploma, but in our other programs, who are artists, practicing artists, in all sorts of media. This year I've got a painter and a sculptor, but it varies in any given year, and we really welcome that. And you will find that although this is not a fine arts based course, it is an academic course, you will find that through the research forum, which I alluded to earlier, but also through the kind of the art history and the sort of the world of exhibitions and galleries in London, that there's plenty to interest you if you're coming from a more practical background. So yeah, that certainly is no obstacle. And in terms of this peer group, it is extraordinary, the graduate diploma, because it does put together, as I've said, this disparate group in terms of age, nationality, background, but it works. It works because the one thing that you all have in common, and often people define many more things than just one thing, but initially what you all have in common is a desire for this deep dive into art history. And that is a very unifying force. And it's lovely seeing friendships forged across ages, nationalities and backgrounds, which last well beyond the duration of the diploma. So I hope I allayed that question. Couple more questions on the practical aspects of the course. How many tutors will a student meet during a year? Is a course taught by just a few tutors? It's taught by a variety of members of faculty is the answer. So for example, the foundations course Each block is taught by a member of faculty, and the discussion class is taught by someone else. So that's in any given semester, you're being taught by 4 different people on that course. Similarly with the histories course. All tutors are either members of faculty or associate lecturers with the Courtauld. Yes, that doesn't mean that they haven't had experience teaching elsewhere. For example, myself, I teach an MA in medieval art, but I also do some occasional teaching for the Victoria and Albert Museum. So you'll get a broad range of faculty and different backgrounds and experiences teaching you. How the discussion class is typically structured, again, that varies. Sometimes, for example, with the approaches course, let me talk about that for a moment. I've just been preparing this morning for my semester next after Christmas. How that will work is that the students have readings that they are given, and you see all the readings available at the start of the semester. And I might ask a student, a group of students to present on one of those readings, and then we might, in the course of the discussion, the broader group, unpick some of the elements of that reading. So that can be quite a text-based focus. Sometimes the class I sat in on yesterday, for example, on the foundations module, the tutor put up a couple of images, Counter-Reformation prints, one that had been promulgated by the Reformation, and one that was promulgated by those on the other side, and it was a discussion on sort of a more sort of visual analysis-based exercise. So it's a combination of the seminar leader guiding discussion and maybe putting out some sort of certain points at the start of the session, but then very much opening up for discussion geared towards the readings that have been set and the sort of key points that have been made in the lecture. But it will vary upon, module upon module as to how that discussion goes. But it's a really nice chance, and it was great in the discussion classes that I went to yesterday with both groups from the diploma to see students asking questions if they haven't understood something. That's also the chance to sort of clarify points, but also really kind of feeling confident about sort of positing opinions on these images and having a sort of good discussion about sort of historical background. And this is where I think the sort of varied experiences of the cohort really come to the fore, because someone in the cohort, for example, had studied Spanish history, so was able to kind of give their insight into sort of the Spanish Counter-Reformation. So each group will have variety, but it's a chance for people to speak. Not everyone is comfortable speaking, and that can take a bit of time to sort of build up those skills. But these seminar groups are very much designed to kind of help you and sort of steer you into the kind of questions to be asking of the objects that you're studying. I think, as far as I can see from my list of questions, that is it. Unless I've missed anything, Anna.
It looks like there's one that's just come in about where the classes take place.
Classes take place, yes, thank you. Classes take place at Vernon Square, which is our London campus, which is just near King's Cross. However, and that's where the lecture theatres and the classroom, the seminar rooms are. But a lot of classes, and it varies given the module, but you'll spend time, for example, at the British Museum, at the Victoria and Albert Museum, and depending on the period of the histories module, other sort of places in London. So your home, if you like, will be Vernon Square in London, but you'll be going out and about. And yes, the Somerset House is available as a resource. Certainly, student groups go to the gallery, but we've just announced a very exciting project for the when we will be the teaching will be moving back into Somerset House, but that will not be for another few years. So teaching, as I've said, is in Vernon Square. So I think that's it. You may have other questions that you'll think about, and I've left deliberately on the screen mine and Anna's email addresses. Please do reach out to us and have a look at the website. There's a lot of information there, as Anna was explaining, and that will hopefully answer your questions. But I'm very happy to follow up with that. But otherwise, thank you very much for watching and also for putting forward such interesting questions. I hope that we've been able to answer them. I hope we've been able to make you think that this is a course that you'd like to apply for, and I really look forward to reading your applications and hopefully welcoming you to the Courtauld. Thank you.
Thank you.